Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the constant pressure to have everything figured out, to secure your future, to predict every outcome, and to live in a constant state of control? What if I told you that the very thing you're striving for, security, stability, control, is the reason you're feeling anxious, uncertain, and restless? What if the way we've been conditioned to think about safety is completely wrong? Alan Watts, one of the most profound philosophers of the 20th century, once said something that might shake you to your core. The search for safety is the search for insecurity. Yes, you heard that right. The very thing you're chasing to find peace might be the thing that's causing your chaos. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into one of life's most ironic truths. The more you try to control, the more you lose control. We'll explore how seeking safety might be the root of your anxiety, and how embracing uncertainty might be the key to unlocking true peace. We'll look at how our minds and bodies are hardwired to react to change, why we're so resistant to it, and most importantly, how we can shift our perspective to finally find that elusive peace we've all been chasing. But that's not all. By the end of this video, you'll walk away with a completely new understanding of anxiety and how to overcome it. I'll share a personal story, revealing how I transformed my life by simply letting go of control. And I'll give you the tools to do the same. Before we jump in, if you're ready to explore this profound shift in perspective, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear this, and don't forget to subscribe for more transformative insights. And if you find this video truly valuable, you can support the channel by donating through Super Thanks. Every contribution helps me continue creating content that can change lives just like this one. The search for security is something we're all familiar with. Whether it's financial stability, career success, or personal relationships, society has ingrained in us the importance of achieving safety and certainty. It's easy to understand why, after all, having a secure foundation can provide peace of mind. But what if this very pursuit of safety is causing more harm than good? What if the desire for control over every aspect of our lives is the very thing that creates anxiety? Alan Watts, one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century, challenged conventional wisdom with his assertion that the search for safety is the search for insecurity. This statement seems paradoxical at first. How can the desire for safety, something we all instinctively seek, be the source of our distress? To understand this, we must look deeper into how the mind works and the nature of human experience. Watts points out that the more we try to secure our lives and make everything predictable, the more we fall into a trap of anxiety. The need to control is in itself a reflection of our deep-seated fear of the unknown. We are so conditioned to seek certainty and stability that we forget that life, by its very nature, is uncertain. The more we try to control the uncontrollable, the more anxiety we invite into our lives. Take a moment to think about your own life. When was the last time you felt a sense of unease or fear about the future? For many of us, it's an ongoing feeling, whether we're worried about financial security, job stability, or personal relationships. We want to know that everything is going to be okay. But in doing so, we often miss the point. The more we try to ensure everything will be okay, the more we focus on what we can't control, which ironically increases our stress levels. Consider the example of a professional who spends countless hours planning, organizing, and preparing for every possible scenario. Let's say this person, for the sake of this example, is preparing for a major business presentation. They rehearse every word, anticipate every question, and spend sleepless nights making sure they're ready. On the day of the presentation, despite all the preparation, something unexpected happens, a technical glitch, an unanticipated question from the audience, or maybe just a moment of personal uncertainty. The anxiety from trying to control every detail creates the very situation they fear. In contrast, imagine if the same professional decided to approach the presentation differently. Instead of fixating on every possible problem, they accepted that things might not go according to plan. By letting go of the need for absolute control, they open themselves up to the present moment to whatever arises without the paralyzing fear of something going wrong. The irony here is that by relinquishing control, they reduce their anxiety and perform more confidently. This example illustrates Watt's point that the search for security often leads to its opposite: insecurity. The constant need to control every aspect of our lives does not bring the peace we expect. Instead, it creates a constant state of tension, as we're forever striving to avoid what we fear most, the unknown. To understand this dynamic more clearly, we must dive into how anxiety functions in our lives. Anxiety is often misunderstood as simply a mental or emotional problem, but it's rooted in both our biology and our psychology. The brain, in its primal form, is wired to respond to threats with a fight or flight response. In our evolutionary past, this would have been triggered by immediate physical dangers like encountering a predator in the wild. But in today's world, these threats are no longer physical in nature. Instead, they come from abstract worries about the future, like career decisions, financial pressures, or social expectations. Our brain doesn't distinguish between an immediate life-threatening danger and the anxiety we experience when worrying about a work presentation or the potential of losing a relationship. The body responds in the same way it would to a real threat, by releasing stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, causing our heart rates to spike, our muscles to tense, and our breath to quicken. This biological response is perfectly suited for facing immediate physical danger, but in the context of modern life, it's activated far too often and for much less urgent reasons. This creates a chronic state of stress that's difficult to escape. In his book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky explains how our stress response system evolved to deal with short-term threats. In nature, when a zebra is chased by a lion, its body goes into full emergency mode, preparing it to flee or fight. Once the threat is gone, the body returns to normal and the stress response ends. However, humans often live in a state of chronic alertness, worrying about potential threats that may never come to pass. This constant low-level anxiety builds up over time, creating physical and emotional exhaustion. This is where the problem lies. Instead of using our stress response system for immediate threats, we've repurposed it to deal with abstract fears. These fears are often projections into the future, things that haven't happened yet, but that our minds obsess over nonetheless. This creates an endless cycle of anxiety that seems impossible to escape. But what if there's another way to handle anxiety? What if the answer isn't to keep fighting it, but to embrace it? Watt suggests that instead of battling against our anxiety and seeking security, we should learn to live with uncertainty. Life is inherently unpredictable, and the more we try to impose certainty, the more we become disconnected from the present moment. This is a difficult lesson because it requires us to accept that we cannot control everything. In fact, we can control very little. The desire to control the future is what causes much of our distress. Life will unfold whether we try to control it or not, and by accepting this truth, we free ourselves from the burden of anxiety. It's not easy to let go of this need for control, but it is liberating. Consider how many aspects of life we try to manage. Our careers, our relationships, our finances. We spend so much time planning for the future, for a future that is uncertain and beyond our control. In trying to secure this future, we forget that the only real control we have is over the present moment. Think of a person who worries constantly about the potential for failure in their job. They imagine scenarios of being passed over for promotions, getting fired, or not measuring up. This fear of failure can become so overwhelming that it paralyzes them. But what if they decided to focus only on what they can control in the present? Instead of obsessing over every possible outcome, they could put their energy into doing the best work they can right now. This would not eliminate their anxiety, but it would shift the focus from fear of the future to living in the present. In essence, anxiety is not something to be conquered or eliminated. It's something to be understood and accepted. By accepting the uncertainty of life, we allow ourselves to be more at peace with it. Watts encourages us to live in the moment, to embrace the fluid nature of existence, and to let go of the need to control every outcome. The more we fight against the natural flow of life, the more we suffer. The lesson here is clear. By accepting that life is unpredictable and beyond our control, we can begin to release the grip of anxiety. It's not about eliminating fear, but about changing our relationship with it. Instead of seeing anxiety as a threat, we can view it as a signal and invitation to live more fully in the present moment, without the need to control everything around us. Ultimately, the search for safety is an illusion. No amount of planning, organizing, or controlling can guarantee security. The only true security comes from within, by learning to live with the unknown, to embrace uncertainty, and to find peace in the present moment. When we stop fighting against life, we begin to flow with it. And in that flow, we find the peace and freedom we've been searching for all along. Alan Watts, a philosopher and spiritual teacher, has had a profound impact on how we think about life and its inherent uncertainty. One of his most striking observations was that the more we try to seek safety, the more we create anxiety for ourselves. This seems like a paradox, doesn't it? In a world that constantly urges us to secure our future and have everything figured out, the irony lies in the fact that the more we try to control our lives, the more anxious we become. The deeper we dig into seeking certainty and structure, the more we find ourselves gripped by the fear of the very uncertainty that we're trying so hard to avoid. Take a moment and think about the daily rhythms of life. How often are you in a rush? Checking your phone, your calendar, or your watch to make sure that you're on top of everything? The modern world is a whirlwind of deadlines, expectations, and pressures, each moment pulling us toward the future, making us believe that the key to happiness is control. We constantly try to organize and plan, thinking that if we can just figure everything out, we'll be at peace. But in reality, the more effort we put into meticulously planning every aspect of our lives, the more we find ourselves overwhelmed with the fear that something will go wrong, that we might miss something, or that we aren't prepared enough. This constant state of anxious preparation is everywhere. It's in the businessman who works late into the night, trying to forecast every possible risk and opportunity. It's in the student who spends hours studying for a test, stressing over every question they might encounter. It's in the person who spends an inordinate amount of time obsessing over their health, worried about every symptom they feel, imagining every possible worst-case scenario. In all of these cases, the pursuit of certainty, the desire to know exactly what will happen, only deepens the anxiety, because it's impossible to predict every variable that life throws our way. The desire for control manifests itself in various aspects of life. Whether it's over our relationships, finances, or careers, we often find ourselves desperately trying to impose a sense of stability. We think that by managing everything, we'll be able to feel secure. But this desire for control often leads us to a false sense of security, because we fail to recognize that life, by its very nature, is unpredictable. And that unpredictability is what makes it beautiful. We can't guarantee that we will always succeed, that we will always have everything we want, or that we will always be safe. The world is constantly shifting, and trying to hold on to stability in the midst of this shifting tide is what causes stress and anxiety. Take, for example, the highly organized, overachieving individual who meticulously plans out every aspect of their day, from the exact time they wake up to the exact time they go to bed. On paper, this person has everything under control. Their routine is flawless, their goals are set, and everything seems to be in place. But when one unexpected event occurs, maybe they miss an alarm, or something outside of their control disrupts their plan, they suddenly spiral into anxiety. What was once a sense of control quickly shifts to fear. The rigidity of their plans, once a source of security, has now become a source of anxiety because they are unable to handle the unpredictability of life. This scenario is not unique. It's a pattern we see in so many aspects of life. The more we try to control, the more we feel like we're at the mercy of the world. In relationships, for instance, this desire for control often manifests as the need to ensure that everything is perfect. We try to control how people perceive us, what we say, and even how others behave. The problem is that no matter how much we try to control the actions of others, we cannot shape every outcome. People are unpredictable, and the more we try to manipulate them into a specific mold, the more frustrated and anxious we become when things don't go according to our plans. This can apply to our friends, our family, and even our romantic partners. If we're always trying to micromanage the dynamics of these relationships, we're not giving them the space to grow and evolve naturally. And we are certainly not allowing ourselves to experience the spontaneity that makes human connection meaningful. Similarly, in our careers, we might find ourselves fixating on every detail, ensuring that we have all our bases covered, that we are prepared for every possible question or challenge. We might obsess over promotions, evaluations, and accolades, but in doing so, we overlook the fact that no amount of planning can shield us from the unpredictable nature of work life. People get laid off unexpectedly, companies change direction, industries shift. The more we tie our sense of security to a specific outcome or a fixed plan, the more vulnerable we become to the chaos that is an inevitable part of life. Financial security is another example where this desire for control often creates more anxiety than it alleviates. It's not uncommon for individuals to save every penny, meticulously plan their budget, and forecast their financial future to the nth degree. While saving and planning are important, the obsession with ensuring that every possible financial outcome is accounted for can lead to a sense of paralysis. We become so focused on making sure that every financial move is the right one that we forget that life's unpredictable nature means that no amount of financial planning can fully safeguard us from all risk. And yet, despite all this effort to plan and control, anxiety still arises. The more we try to control the uncontrollable, the more we feel like we're losing control. This is the vicious cycle that many people find themselves in. They think that by taking more control, by managing every aspect of their lives, they will find peace and security. But instead, they're just tightening the grip on an illusion, which only leads to more fear and uncertainty. So, what do we do about this? Alan Watts suggests that the key to breaking free from this anxiety is to accept life's inherent uncertainty. Rather than constantly fighting against the unpredictability of life, we must learn to embrace it. The pursuit of safety and control is a natural response to fear, but it's ultimately a futile one. Life is always in motion, and trying to lock it down into a rigid structure is like trying to hold water in your hands. When we stop resisting the flow of life, we begin to find peace. This doesn't mean we stop planning or preparing for the future, but it means we do so with the understanding that no matter how much we try to control, we can't anticipate every outcome. Life is fluid, and we must learn to move with it instead of try and stop it. We must learn to be present in the moment, to let go of our obsession with securing the future and instead enjoy the process of living. One of the most powerful ways to let go of this need for control is through mindfulness and meditation. These practices teach us to be present with whatever is happening right now, without judgment or resistance. When we can accept the present moment as it is, without trying to change it or control it, we begin to release the anxiety that comes from fear of the unknown. Mindfulness helps us recognize that we are not our thoughts, and we don't have to be consumed by them. We can observe them, let them pass, and return to the present moment. Of course, it's not easy to let go of the need for control. It's something that takes practice, patience, and a willingness to confront our fears. But once we begin to shift our mindset and embrace uncertainty, we open ourselves up to a more peaceful and fulfilling life. We learn to trust in the flow of life, rather than trying to force it into a predetermined path. In the end, the desire for control and certainty will always be part of us, but we can learn to recognize it for what it is: a natural response to fear. The more we try to control, the more we actually increase our anxiety, because we are resisting the very nature of life. Life is uncertain, unpredictable, and ever-changing, and that's what makes it beautiful. By letting go of our need to control every outcome, we can find peace in the present moment and learn to flow with the natural rhythms of life. Life, at its core, is all about change. This is one of the most profound truths that we tend to forget as we go about our daily lives. Constantly striving to secure the future and preserve the present. Change is inevitable. It's not just something that happens occasionally. It's the very fabric of existence. Whether we observe the changing sky, watch flowers bloom and wither, or feel the waves gently shift, we are witnessing the flow of life in its purest form. As Alan Watts so elegantly put it, life is fluid, it flows, and so should we. But here's the paradox. Instead of going with the flow, we often fight against it. We spend so much of our time trying to control, preserve, and maintain things as they are. The more we attempt to hold on to the past or project control into the future, the more we realize how futile this struggle is. Everything around us is in constant flux. Nothing remains the same, and the illusion we create is that we can somehow stop life from changing. But the truth is, the very essence of life is change, and everything is impermanent. Take a look at nature for a moment. The flowers that bloom in the spring will wither in the fall. The waves that crash against the shore are constantly shifting, never staying in one place for long. The sky above us changes from clear blue to stormy gray, and the trees lose their leaves, only to grow new ones when the time comes. Everything is in a state of constant transformation. Yet, as humans, we often struggle with this reality. We try to freeze moments in time, clinging to what we have, and resisting the natural process of change. Imagine a person who is constantly worrying about the future, trying to control every aspect of their life. They meticulously plan for the next day, the next month, and even the next year, believing that if they can just manage the future, they will find peace. But in doing so, they miss the point entirely. No matter how much they plan, they cannot stop the inevitable changes that life will bring. There will always be the unexpected change in circumstances, an unforeseen event, or even a shift in their own personal growth. The more they fight against this natural flow, the more anxiety and frustration they experience. This struggle to maintain control is something we all face. We may do it in different ways, whether through obsessing over our careers, clinging to relationships that no longer serve us, or trying to control our finances to an extreme degree. But ultimately, we're trying to impose stability and permanence on a world that is anything but stable. When we resist the natural flow of life, we create tension within ourselves. To illustrate this, think of a river flowing freely. If you place a rock in its path, the water will flow around it. The rock doesn't stop the river, it merely causes a temporary diversion. But the water continues to flow, moving around the obstacle, adjusting to the terrain, and continuing on its journey. Life is much like this river. It flows, adapts, and moves forward no matter what. When we try to block that flow by holding on to something that is meant to change, we only create resistance. We're not stopping life. We're only making it more difficult for ourselves. But what if we could stop resisting? What if we could accept that everything around us, our relationships, our careers, our bodies will change? What if we embrace the impermanence of life instead of clinging to the idea that things should remain the same? This is where true peace lies. When we stop trying to control the uncontrollable and simply accept life as it is, we can begin to find the peace we've been searching for. Consider the example of someone who is struggling with the end of a relationship. They may resist the inevitable shift, trying to hold on to something that no longer serves them. The more they fight against the change, the more they experience pain. But when they finally accept that the relationship has run its course and allow themselves to let go, they can move forward, free from the weight of resistance. It's only in this acceptance of impermanence that they can begin to heal and grow. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up or resigning ourselves to a passive existence. It means acknowledging that change is a natural part of life, and that our role is not to fight against it, but to flow with it. We must learn to embrace uncertainty, to live with the knowledge that nothing stays the same forever. It's only when we accept the impermanence of life that we can truly appreciate the beauty of the present moment. Let's look at an example from the world of business. In today's fast-paced economy, companies must constantly adapt to survive. The businesses that succeed are the ones that are flexible, that can change and evolve with the times. Those that resist change, that try to cling to outdated models or strategies, often find themselves left behind. The same is true for individuals. The more we resist change, the more we limit our ability to grow. When we stop trying to control the future and instead embrace the uncertainty, we open ourselves up to new possibilities, new opportunities, and new experiences. This idea of embracing change and impermanence can be difficult, especially when we feel like we're losing control. But the key is understanding that change is not the enemy. In fact, change is what makes life beautiful. It's the very reason why we experience growth, creativity, and transformation. If everything remained the same, life would be stagnant. It's only through change that we can evolve and move forward. Let's consider the metaphor of the caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. The caterpillar doesn't try to resist the change, it accepts the process of metamorphosis. Through this process, it sheds its old form and emerges as something entirely new. The butterfly is not afraid of change. It doesn't fear the unknown stages of its transformation. Instead, it embraces the process, knowing that it will lead to something more beautiful. This is a powerful lesson for us. Instead of resisting change, we should embrace it, knowing that it has the potential to lead us to a higher state of being. Change, then, is not something to fear. It's something to welcome. The more we try to control the future and hold on to the present, the more we miss out on the opportunities that change brings. Life is meant to be fluid and ever-changing. When we stop fighting it and learn to flow with it, we unlock the true beauty of existence. This doesn't mean that we should live recklessly or without responsibility. It means that we should be mindful of our attachment to the need for security and control. Life will continue to change, and so should we. The more we accept this truth, the more we find ourselves at peace with the world around us. We begin to see the beauty in the flow of life, even when it seems uncertain or uncomfortable. It's easy to get caught up in the desire for stability and permanence. But when we focus too much on these things, we miss out on the richness that life offers. Impermanence is not something to fear, it's something to celebrate. It's what allows us to grow, to transform, and to live fully. Ultimately, accepting the impermanence of life is what leads to true freedom. It's only when we let go of the need to control every outcome, every moment, and every detail that we can truly experience life as it was meant to be experienced. By embracing change, we allow ourselves to move with the flow of life, to find peace in the present moment, and to appreciate the beauty of the ever-changing world around us. The fluidity of life, once we stop resisting it, becomes the very thing that sets us free. To truly grasp why the pursuit of security causes anxiety, it's essential to delve into the biology behind it, specifically how our brain and body respond to stress. We're often told that anxiety is something we can control with willpower or that it's a flaw in our mental health. But the truth is much more intricate, tied deeply to how our brains have evolved to deal with danger. When we think of stress, we usually imagine the modern-day pressures we face: work deadlines, relationship struggles, financial worries, and the constant flow of information from social media and technology. However, the stress system in our body was not designed for these modern challenges. It was shaped over millennia to respond to physical threats, such as predators in the wild. Imagine a time when humans were living in caves, surrounded by dangers like wild animals. If a predator approached, the body would react instantly, activating the fight or flight response to ensure survival. This stress response system is incredibly efficient when it comes to immediate physical danger. It floods the body with hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, causing rapid changes. An increased heart rate, faster breathing, and heightened alertness. This state, while essential for survival, is meant to be short-lived. Once the immediate threat passes, the body should return to a state of calm. The fight or flight response was designed to handle immediate, tangible threats. However, in the world we live in today, these types of physical threats are rare. Instead, we face what might be called psychological predators, stressors like tight deadlines, looming uncertainties, social pressures, and concerns about the future. These are not immediate physical dangers, but our brain doesn't distinguish between real and perceived threats. If our brain perceives a situation as threatening, it triggers the same physiological response as if we were facing a life or death situation. This is where the problem lies. Our brains are still wired for a world that no longer exists. We no longer face the constant danger of predators, yet we experience stress responses triggered by work pressures, personal insecurities, and even abstract concerns about the future. A notification on your phone, a work email with a tight deadline, or a comment on social media can trigger a stress response in the exact same way that an encounter with a lion might have. Your heart races, your palms sweat, your breath becomes shallow, all symptoms of the body preparing for fight or flight. The issue with this is that, unlike a physical threat, these modern stressors do not resolve quickly. The lion either leaves or the immediate danger is over. In the case of modern anxiety, however, the stress response is chronic. We may spend hours, days, or even weeks anticipating stressors that may or may not ever come to fruition. The body remains in a heightened state of alertness, responding to threats that don't exist in the present moment. This means that our stress response system, originally designed to help us survive life or death situations, is now being activated in response to non-threatening situations, causing prolonged anxiety. This cycle becomes even more pronounced when we realize that we are not merely reacting to current events, we are also constantly anticipating future problems. The brain doesn't just process what's happening right now. It's constantly forecasting, predicting, and imagining potential dangers. It's part of our evolutionary survival mechanism. In the wild, being able to anticipate threats like a predator lurking just beyond the trees was essential. But in the modern world, this instinct often leads us to catastrophize, to imagine worst-case scenarios that may never happen. A deadline for a project might cause someone to imagine failure, rejection, or even job loss. A minor disagreement with a loved one might lead to a fear of abandonment or breakup. These thoughts, while often disconnected from actual reality, trigger the same stress responses in the body as if the threats were immediate. Think about the times when you've experienced anxiety over something in the future presentation, an exam, a tough conversation. Your body goes into overdrive as if the event were happening right then and there. Your heart races, your muscles tense, and your breathing becomes shallow, even though the event is not happening in the moment. This is your brain's predictive stress response at work, which was fine-tuned over millions of years to handle immediate threats. But now, it is acting in response to situations that are speculative and distant, sometimes even completely imagined. This mismatch between our biology and the world we live in is a primary reason why anxiety can feel overwhelming. We are in a constant state of alert, triggered by anticipatory stress. The body doesn't differentiate between a real threat and one that has yet to come. And just as we don't live in caves with predators anymore, we also don't need to be on constant high alert. Yet our brains continue to react to every challenge as if it were a life or death situation, which explains the chronic, debilitating stress many people feel. Moreover, the way we anticipate disasters plays a significant role in increasing anxiety. When we think about future events, our brains often assume the worst possible outcomes. A person who is facing a challenging work project might not just worry about finishing the task, but may also envision losing their job, disappointing their team, or even being publicly humiliated. The brain, looking for patterns and connections, predicts the worst-case scenario, and this often leads to a cascade of stress responses. This cycle is especially prominent in situations where we feel we have no control, whether it's financial uncertainty, the health of a loved one, or the unpredictable nature of the future. Maybe from a potential employer or a doctor with test results. The call hasn't come yet, but the mere anticipation of it begins to trigger stress. Their heart races, they begin to sweat, and their mind races through possible outcomes. What if the call brings bad news? What if they don't get the job? What if the results are negative? These thoughts, although hypothetical, are perceived by the brain as immediate threats. The body reacts with the same physiological response it would have if the bad news were already delivered. Interestingly, this stress response also has an evolutionary advantage when the dangers are real. In ancient times, being in a constant state of alertness allowed humans to stay prepared for real dangers. But today, this system works against us. Modern stressors rarely require immediate physical action, and the constant activation of the stress response can actually become harmful over time. The stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, are helpful in short bursts, but when they persist over time, they begin to wear down the body. Chronic stress is linked to a wide range of health problems, including cardiovascular diseases, weakened immune function, digestive issues, and even mental health problems like depression and anxiety disorders. The problem is that we can't simply turn off this stress response. Our brains are wired to react this way, and in many cases, we don't even realize it's happening. We become so used to living in a heightened state of alertness that it becomes our default mode. We're constantly anticipating what might go wrong, and this anticipation keeps us locked in a cycle of anxiety. In a more practical sense, this means that we are likely to feel anxious when we encounter something uncertain or unpredictable. The brain loves predictability and control, but life is full of uncertainty. From an evolutionary standpoint, humans are wired to be risk-averse to avoid potential harm. But in modern life, most risks are not physical. They are emotional, social, or psychological. And our bodies treat them in the same way, triggering the fight or flight response. This is why some people may experience anxiety even when there is no clear threat. For example, someone with social anxiety may feel their heart race and their palms sweat just thinking about an upcoming social event, even though no physical danger is present. Similarly, someone facing a stressful day at work may experience heightened stress levels, even if the challenges they face are not life-threatening. These reactions are not about the situation at hand. They are about the brain's perception of the future, the unknown, and the potential for harm. The most important takeaway here is that this constant state of anxiety is not your fault. It's a natural byproduct of a brain that was designed to react to immediate threats. In today's world, however, those threats are often imagined or exaggerated. This is why anxiety can feel so overwhelming. It's the brain responding to a world that doesn't exist in the same way it used to. The key to understanding and managing anxiety is to recognize that it is rooted in these outdated survival mechanisms. When we can understand this, we can begin to break free from the cycle of stress and embrace a more mindful, present existence. I used to be someone who believed that control was the key to happiness. I thought if I could just plan every step of my life, if I could predict and manage every outcome, then I would find peace. There was a time when I thought that if I simply could organize everything, have my career perfectly mapped out, maintain flawless relationships, and ensure financial stability, I would finally feel secure. But as time went on, something unexpected began to happen. Despite all the planning, despite all the effort, anxiety crept in, and it came in ways I couldn't explain. The more I tried to control, the more anxious I became. It was as though I were stuck in a loop. No matter how much I planned or tried to manage, life would throw me off course. And not just with big events, but in the smallest ways. A relationship would change unexpectedly, a work project would shift direction, or an opportunity would present itself in ways I hadn't anticipated. These things were not necessarily bad, but they were out of my control. And every time something unexpected happened, I would tighten up, my mind would race, and I would find myself overwhelmed with anxiety. This constant pursuit of control, this obsession with certainty, wasn't just making me anxious, it was robbing me of the peace I so desperately craved. It wasn't until I experienced a moment of deep realization that the pattern started to shift. I recall one evening sitting by myself in a quiet room, overwhelmed by the thought of what the future might hold. I had everything laid out in my head step by step, detail by detail, but I still couldn't shake the unease. That was the moment I started questioning everything. I realized that all this control I was exerting was an illusion. It wasn't bringing me peace, it was fueling my anxiety. The more I tried to predict and plan, the more fearful I became of the unknown. It became clear to me that by constantly seeking safety and certainty, I was living in resistance to the very nature of life itself. Life, by its nature, is unpredictable. It is in constant flux, constantly changing. And to deny that truth was to deny the essence of being human. I decided to take a step back from the constant need to predict and control. Instead of being consumed by the thought of what might happen next, I chose to surrender, to let go of the illusion of control. This was a difficult choice, and it felt uncomfortable at first. Letting go of control is not an easy thing to do, especially when we've been taught to plan and prepare for every eventuality. But I realized that I had been holding on to something that wasn't real. The need for control wasn't about securing my future. It was about avoiding the discomfort of the present moment. By letting go, I began to embrace the present moment. I began to experience life as it came, not as I thought it should unfold. I would take walks without planning where I was going. I would engage in conversations without obsessing over every word I said. And I would live each day without trying to predict the future. And in doing so, I began to find a sense of peace that I had never experienced before. At first, the peace felt unfamiliar. It felt strange not to be constantly planning, to not have every outcome in mind. But over time, I realized that it wasn't about a lack of planning, it was about surrendering the need for control and trusting that life would unfold as it should. There was a sense of freedom in letting go, an incredible sense of liberation in accepting that I didn't need to know every outcome. The future was no longer something I needed to fear. It was simply something I would face as it came. Living with uncertainty became my new norm, and with it came a profound sense of calm. I stopped fighting against the flow of life, and instead, I began to flow with it. The more I embraced uncertainty, the more I realized that life was not something to be controlled. It was something to be experienced. The moments that once seemed like disruptions, the unexpected events, the changes, the unpredictability became the very things that made life rich and meaningful. One of the most transformative moments came when I realized that peace does not come from controlling what happens to us, but from accepting what is. That was the key. In my surrender to the unknown, I found peace. I stopped trying to make everything fit neatly into a box and allowed life to be messy, unpredictable, and real. And in this mess, I found the beauty of being alive. The truth is, the more we try to control, the more we hold onto the illusion of safety. But safety is not something we can find through control. It's something that arises naturally when we stop resisting the natural flow of life. Life will always be uncertain, but it is in embracing that uncertainty that we find our true freedom. I also began to notice how my body responded to this new way of living. The tightness in my chest, the anxious thoughts that once overwhelmed me, started to loosen. I felt lighter, freer. Instead of dreading the unknown, I started looking forward to it. The future no longer felt like a looming threat. It felt like an open possibility. This shift in perspective was not instantaneous. It took time, and it required consistent practice. But as I continued to surrender control, I began to experience less fear, less anxiety, and more peace. I realized that anxiety comes from the belief that we must control everything around us in order to feel safe. But safety isn't about control, it's about surrender. It's about trusting that, even in the chaos, we are safe. It's about accepting that we don't know what tomorrow will bring, but knowing that we will be okay regardless. Letting go of control didn't mean that I stopped planning altogether. It didn't mean I stopped caring about my future or stopped making decisions. It simply meant that I stopped expecting everything to go according to plan. I stopped demanding certainty and allowed life to unfold naturally. I became more present, more aware of each moment, and less consumed by worries about what might or might not happen in the future. In the process, I found that I could still make decisions, take action, and live intentionally, but without the constant grip of anxiety. I could plan for the future, but I no longer clung to the idea that things had to go a certain way. I stopped seeing uncertainty as a threat and started seeing it as an invitation to live more fully, to embrace the unknown with curiosity and wonder rather than fear. This process of transformation is not something that happens overnight. It takes practice, patience, and a willingness to let go of deeply ingrained habits. It's about rewiring the way we think about life, moving from a mindset of control to one of acceptance. The journey is not always easy, but it is always worth it. By letting go of the need to control, we open ourselves up to a life of greater freedom, peace, and joy. And so, as I look back, I can see how far I've come. From a person consumed by anxiety and the need for control, to someone who now lives more freely, more fully, and with more peace. It's a continual process of letting go, of embracing the unknown, of trusting that life will unfold as it should. And in this process, I've found the peace I had been searching for all along, not in controlling my circumstances, but in letting go of the need to control them. It's a lesson that continues to unfold for me every day, and one I believe we can all learn. By letting go of the need for certainty, we can embrace the beauty of uncertainty and find peace in the flow of life. Life is inherently uncertain, and yet, we often find ourselves clinging desperately to the idea that we can control every aspect of it. This deep desire to feel safe and secure often leads us to overthink, overplan, and obsess over what's to come. The truth is that the more we try to control our lives, the more we feed into the anxiety that comes with this need for safety. Ironically, the search for security itself is the very thing that brings insecurity. It creates a cycle of fear and tension, trapping us in a constant state of uncertainty that we are desperately trying to avoid. The philosopher Alan Watts observed this paradox with remarkable clarity. The search for safety is the search for insecurity. In other words, the more we try to avoid the natural ebb and flow of life, trying to stabilize it, predict it, and control it, the more we invite anxiety and dissatisfaction. It's a vicious cycle that many of us are unknowingly trapped in. Our culture, society, and even our own minds condition us to believe that we need to have everything under control in order to live a fulfilling life. We are taught that we must have a stable career, a secure home, predictable relationships, and a well-planned future. But what happens when life inevitably throws us curveballs? Let's imagine for a moment someone who is so focused on securing every detail of their life. They may plan out their career path meticulously, ensuring each step is well thought out. Their financial future is plotted with precision. Their relationships are carefully managed, ensuring that there is no room for conflict or surprises. Yet despite all this effort, they find themselves feeling anxious, uncertain, and even overwhelmed. Why? Because the nature of life is change, and no matter how much we try to control, life will always be unpredictable. The truth is that we cannot plan for every outcome, and this inability to predict everything that will happen can be a source of great anxiety. But this isn't a flaw in us. It's simply the nature of being human. Life is fluid, it flows, and so should we. But instead of going with this natural flow, we fight it. We resist the uncertainty, the unknown, and the inevitable changes that come our way. We try to cling to things that were never meant to stay the same. In doing so, we create a sense of false security, one that doesn't bring peace, but rather fuels our anxiety. One way to understand this better is to look at it from a biological perspective. Our stress systems were designed to help us survive immediate physical dangers, such as being chased by a predator. This fight or flight response is an evolutionary mechanism that once helped our ancestors avoid danger. But in today's world, there are no lions chasing us. Yet our brains still react to stressors like work deadlines, social pressures, or relationship problems as though they are life-threatening. Our bodies experience the same physical reactions: elevated heart rates, shallow breathing, muscle tension, as if we were still running from a predator. This response, once necessary for survival, has now become maladaptive. We're reacting to stressors that are not real threats, and this prolonged state of stress is what leads to anxiety. The key to understanding why this happens lies in how we perceive the future. We anticipate what might happen, and in doing so, we create a story in our minds that often involves worst-case scenarios. This fear of the unknown, this need to predict every possible outcome, is a major cause of the anxiety we feel. It's not the present moment that's threatening, but our anticipation of what might happen. We have become so preoccupied with what could go wrong in the future that we forget to live fully in the present. This is where Alan Watts' teaching on acceptance comes into play. Watts suggests that the way to overcome this cycle of anxiety is not by fighting against it, but by embracing uncertainty. Instead of resisting the impermanence of life, we need to accept it. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation or giving up. Rather, it means living fully in the present moment without constantly worrying about the future. It means letting go of the need for certainty and control, and instead, learning to flow with the natural rhythms of life. When we stop seeking safety and certainty, we paradoxically find peace. The more we accept that life is unpredictable and ever-changing, the more we can relax into the present moment. Life is not about controlling every detail. It's about being present with what is happening right now. When we release our attachment to the idea of safety, we open ourselves up to the beauty of the present moment. We stop living in fear of what might happen and start living fully in the here and now. This doesn't mean that we should abandon all responsibility or stop planning for the future. It simply means that we need to recognize that we cannot control everything. We cannot predict every outcome, and trying to do so only leads to frustration and anxiety. Instead, we can make plans, take action, and prepare for the future, but without clinging to the idea that everything must go exactly as we expect. The true key to peace lies in accepting that uncertainty is a part of life. There was a time when I was consumed by the need to control everything. I was constantly planning, constantly trying to make sure that everything was just right. But life had other plans. One of my projects failed, and I found myself at a crossroads. It was a moment of deep uncertainty, and I was terrified. For a long time, I tried to fix it, tried to control the outcome. But no matter what I did, the situation didn't improve. It wasn't until I stopped fighting and accepted that I couldn't control the outcome that things began to shift. I let go of my need for certainty, and in doing so, I found peace. I embraced the uncertainty, and I realized that it wasn't as scary as I had imagined. It was simply life unfolding as it was meant to, and I didn't need to control it to be okay. This experience taught me that peace doesn't come from avoiding uncertainty or trying to control everything. It comes from accepting the present moment and trusting that life will unfold as it should. When we release the need for control, we are able to live more freely, more fully, and with more peace. Living in the present moment is not always easy, especially in a world that constantly demands that we plan and prepare for the future. But the more we practice acceptance, the more we realize that it is not about having everything figured out. It's about being fully present with what is. The more we embrace uncertainty, the less we are controlled by fear, and the more we can enjoy the journey of life. Life is not about reaching a destination. It's about experiencing each moment as it comes. In conclusion, the key to overcoming anxiety and finding peace is to stop seeking safety and control. Instead, we must learn to accept the inherent uncertainty of life. By letting go of the need for certainty and embracing the present moment, we can find the peace that we are searching for. Anxiety is not something that needs to be fixed or eliminated. It is a natural response to the uncertainty of life. But when we stop fighting against it and start accepting it as a part of the human experience, we can transcend our fear and live more fully. Peace comes not from controlling life, but from living fully in the flow of it. When we stop seeking safety, we finally find it. So there you have it. Life's greatest peace comes not from trying to control everything, but from embracing the uncertainty and impermanence that are woven into the fabric of existence. The more we resist life's flow, the more we trap ourselves in a cycle of anxiety and fear. But when we let go and we accept life as it is, we discover true freedom, true peace. Remember, the key to finding serenity is not in securing safety, but in surrendering to the natural flow of life. Life will always be unpredictable, but that's what makes it beautiful. Once we accept the chaos, we unlock a deeper sense of peace within ourselves. Now, I want to hear from you. How has the idea of letting go of control changed your perspective on anxiety and life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading your stories. And you might just help someone else who's struggling with the same challenges. If you found value in today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who could benefit from these insights, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future videos that can help you transform your life. And remember, if you feel inspired by this message and want to support the channel further, consider leaving a super thanks. Your generosity helps me keep bringing you more thought-provoking content. Thank you for your support. Until next time, embrace uncertainty, live in a moment, and trust that you are exactly where you need to be.